Good morning, everybody. Let's move on to next here for everyone, if we could. Again, I'm Greg Stewart, MMA CEO, if it matters, anybody cares besides my family. Thank you, Sean and Laura, both who sit on the boards of the MMA, so we appreciate their support. This next group up here is really interesting. You may have heard in my opening talk today around the extension value of brand. Let me just be really clear what that research is for you. It's called Brand is Performance. It's the name of the project for us. And it's basically, without giving away too much what Vassilis and others will share here, it's basically trying to identify what is the optimized level between brand and performance marketing, between long and short term. Is there a thing? Does that matter? How do we look at those two things? And really, in essence, what it turned into now, what is the value of brand? And we, the MMA, believe that we, as marketers, have a huge responsibility to tell them, to tell our CFOs, what is the value of brand? How does it look in an extension of the initial efforts? I'm a huge brand believer. I've worked on P&G business for years. Many of you believe in brand, but we have to explain it in financial terms in order to make proper investment decisions. So you're going to hear about the latest that we have on that project that now has been going on for a little over 3 years. And so if you would just help me give a big, nice, possible welcome to, I'll give you the names, Thomas Duncan, the Vice President, Head of Marketing at Kroger Company, one of the companies who is not too busy to do better. By the way, I see Kay down here in the front of the room. Very good. Another one not too busy to do better, Linda Lee, the CMO at Campbell Soup Company, and then MMA's own Vassilis Bakopoulous, who's my SVP, Head of Research. So welcome to the stage, everyone. Thank you.
I know.
Let's get settled.
Exactly.
Hello, everyone. Tom.
Morning.
Linda, welcome, possible.
Hello.
All right. So we're going to be talking about Brandnomics, which is, as I think Greg said, a word that we made up about the value of brand and the economics of brand. And we're going to be sharing some exciting new research that we've been doing with Tom and Linda. Now, before we do any of this, let's give a little bit of context, right, in terms of where you guys are coming from. So, classes. Tom, let me start with you.
Yeah.
Right? It's Tuesday morning. We're sitting here in Miami, right? If you were back in the ranch, what would you be doing? Tell us a little bit about business priorities, things that are important.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first, Voss, thanks for having us. MMA, thanks for putting on just a truly incredible event with a lot of inspiring speakers. So from a work standpoint, you know, we're focused on value creation for the Kroger company, right? And
can we hear Tom? Can everybody hear Tom? Okay.
I think most people probably know Kroger. We have 2,700 stores. We have a whole bunch of different brands, but our job from a marketing perspective is to fuel the enterprise, right? And so when we go talk to our shareholders, we're talking about delivering 8 to 11% TSR, which is hard to compartmentalize for a marketer. Well, underneath that, we need to deliver sales growth, we need to deliver profit growth, we deliver market share growth. We need to deliver the trifecta of consumer business metrics. And underneath that is really where we start to operate from a marketing perspective. So to do that, we need to be acquiring more customers, having more customers shop in our stores and in our digital platforms, and we need to be deepening our loyalty with them. And when we think about loyalty, it's not an esoteric concept, it's very scientific. It is, we need to be driving frequency of trips more often, and we need to be driving breadth of categories that customers are purchasing. So, and then the real work happens underneath that, the insight work, the media plans, the optimizations, all of the work to actually bring that to life and make a meaningful connection emotionally with our customers to delight them in our stores and give them a great experience and deliver superior value to them. Right. So that layer is where the work is happening, but it's all laddered up really linear to how do we help fuel value creation for the total enterprise. And we obviously don't do that alone, but that's the part where we can help contribute.
Got it. And sorry, the reason I asked you here, Tom, is that I couldn't hear. I mean, maybe the megaphones go that way. So, but yeah, I got most of it. So, Linda, what about you?
Well, I think Tom put it very well, and not surprising, we're somewhat in the similar space of food and CPG. And I would say, maybe to add on without repeating, at a human level, there's no question the inflation that consumers have experienced is way above, right, the reported inflation. So we see in consumers, especially that middle, of how do you make your dollar stretch. And so we believe we've got that portfolio to help consumers stretch their dollar, stretch their meals, and in that value creation, how do we bring that to life?
Right. Okay. Now, so let's talk a little bit about how we define success for marketing. We're going to go from we give business priorities, now we're going to go a little bit to vision, where, and success for marketing, and how we define it, and how we measure it, and then we're going to go to brand. So, talk to us a little bit about what metrics you use when it comes to, measurement. How do you kind of think in terms of short-term versus long-term? How do you define success and how you measure it, I guess? So, Linda, maybe we start with you.
I feel like it's such a big question. It should be simple, but it's not. We use what I call a layered measurement system within just knowing that, hey, if I'm in a campaign, how am I optimizing? What are those measurements? And they're pretty classic, whether it's engagement, completion, impressions, those types of in-campaign. But the broader, we classically will use marketing mixes, but that is very delayed. And frankly, it's what got us involved into the study is the question of, well, what new insights or changes to how we're doing our marketing are we drawing from those marketing mixes that give us short-term, long-term, but it's all modeled. And I wasn't seeing us create new changes, new behaviors, new insights. And so thus, when this opportunity came about of, hey, if we could do attribution, we now have the ability to do that, what would that tell us?
Yeah.
And so we'll get into more of that.
Good. Yeah. Tom, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, Linda said it well, and she and I have talked a little bit about this. I think we really want to have a performance mindset for all of the marketing that we're doing. And I think there's been this construct of there's brand marketing and there's performance marketing. I fundamentally disagree with that. It's all performance marketing. It's always been performance marketing. There's a difference in the fidelity of the signal. Absolutely, the fidelity of the signal you can get on digital advertising and digital platforms is much higher. But 20 years ago, I was getting sales impact and ROI on linear TV advertising. To Linda's point, it took too long, but we were measuring it. And so I think it's this idea of we should be able to make everything performant, and we should be able to execute in a continuous improvement mindset on that throughout all of our campaigns. And so I do think that's part of the work for us to do as marketers, and one of the ways for us to think versus these are very separate constructs that we have to operate in.
So do you guys hear that? It's all, let me try to say again what you just said. It's all performance marketing, but it's just the fidelity of the signal that is different. That's a good way of putting it. All right, now let's talk about brand now. So brand is one of those things that is, the economics of brand, again, back to the fidelity of the signal, right, is probably a little bit more complicated sometimes to kind of capture that. And sometimes it is a debate in many organizations. So talk to us a little bit about the type of discourse that is happening, taking place. Let's go with you, Tom, now. Do you have alignment internally? And if you think about sometimes, let me wear my finance hat on. I have a little finance hat because I studied finance. So a lot of times finance and CFOs think in terms of value creation versus value capturing, right? So, and that's kind of a good lens to evaluate everything that you do and all the investments that you make. So where do you kind of see brand kind of be positioned in that spectrum?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you think about the spectrum, and this very much goes back to my comment on performance, it has to be about value creation. It has to help drive customer acquisition. It has to help drive trial of products or brands. And so, when we look in our organization, we absolutely have alignment on brand. I think the thing that's important for marketers to do, for us to do, for me to do, is the things we're doing that are branding related, how are they paying the rent and how are they helping improve ROIs incrementally? Why are we doing them and what's the financial benefit for them versus it's just because of the brand, which is hard for a CEO, CFO board to compartmentalize how that's going to actually add value today versus the other investment choices that they could make.
Right. Linda, what about you?
You know, I think I've said this before in other forums. I'm uniquely in a position where I feel like I'm in an organization where there isn't a debate of the or, and it really is the and so the energies are in both, right? How do you, I like your, continuous improvement. On the capture side, that continuous improvement, stretching to think differently, not just saving dollars, but I just created a role around design to value. Not a new concept, but bringing that back to, that's a way to do value capture, but it's also a way to do value creation.
Right.
And value creation, in some ways, can be a bit of where the magic is, and that's why a lot of the conversations are always around that. So maybe similar of value creation ultimately is what gets the majority of the conversations, the airtime.
Great. Okay. Do we have the slides on? Yeah, we're going to share some slides now. We're going to share some new data from the work that we've been doing. The work we've been working with Tom's team for the last at least a year. And Linda, we've been working half a year. We're halfway there, probably halfway there. So, these things take a while, but we're here. Right. So before we do that, I want to kind of spend a minute talking about this, which is a little bit about where the data is coming from, right? And I want to spend a couple of minutes on this because, Tom, to your point, it's the fidelity of the signal, and sometimes measurement is tricky when it comes to kind of quantifying the full impact of marketing. Now, the MMA has spent years to develop a new methodology. I want to kind of, Joel, I can't see you, but Joel Rubinson is there he is. The crazy scientist and mastermind behind all this. So big thank you. And he has another kind of session tomorrow at, I think, 2:15 or something about the movable mills. Make sure you see that. But the methodology here brings two important innovations that I want to talk about. The first one is that typically when we evaluate the effectiveness of a campaign, we try to connect ad exposure data with either brand survey data to see a brand lift or with sales data. What we don't do, and we can do typically, is to connect all three of those things at the level of the individual, which is exactly what we've done here. By doing that, now we have the ability to start seeing some patterns between different cohorts of people, favorables and non-favorables that you're going to see in a minute, and we start kind of understanding how something that is here kind of start influencing something that is here in your hand, right? So it's like the whole thing, the journey between the brain and behavior. So that's number one. The second thing that we're introducing as an innovation in this is that we're really kind of evolving this from not just doing a moment in time measurement of like, okay, how the campaign performed, check, campaign plus look back window, but taking this for another 7 months, at least 7 months after the end of the campaign, and measuring behavior and attributing that back into the original campaign in an experimental way. So this is, again, two important things that allow us to kind of see differently the way that a campaign performed, and we're going to see that right away. So Linda, with your approval, let me share three slides from right out of the oven or stove or stove. Okay, very fresh. Okay, so the first thing that we saw with this is a campaign that we did for Campbell's Red and White. Obviously, big iconic brand. What we did see, the first thing that we wanted to validate is whether favorability matters. Right, you have this huge brand, everybody knows it. What does it mean in terms of the people who are favorable to the brand versus non-favorable to the brand? Now, what this thing says is that favorability creates an annuity of conversions. Favorables are much more likely, 2x more likely to be, to convert, to buy and in terms of dollars per household, as we see here. And this is a pattern that we've seen before. We have done 2 more studies, and you see here the study that we're going to talk about in a minute with Tom, and the study that we've seen with Ally. We've also been seeing kind of big multipliers when it comes to the how favorables versus non-favorables kind of respond. Now, as we start thinking about this and moving from left to right, you probably notice that 1.9 is probably on the smaller side, but that's also the reverse relationship with the size of this brand and where it's sitting. So what you see here is that 78% of people are favorable for red and white soup, right? Everybody knows and loves and has memories. So the question I think that I'm going to be asking you is like, Linda, what do you do when everybody loves you, right? What is it a nice problem to have? What do you do when everybody loves you, right? And what you try to do, at least based on the study that we're seeing here, and that's the last slide for the Campbell's kind of data, is that you try to kind of turn that love and favorability into behavior, right? How do you do that? I mean, with advertising, right? And we see that favorables are a lot more responsive to advertising compared to non-favorables. How much more responsive? A lot more responsive. So the 4x here shows the absolute difference in sales lift when it comes to favorables versus non-favorables. 5x is the same thing for penetration. So let me pause here real quick. What do you guys think? Linda, let me start with you.
So I think firstly, seeing the 78%, what do you do when 78% already know, they'll love you? I think everyone knows. It affirmed why my job is so hard, why it feels so hard, so much. But these things aren't rocket science, right? This idea of having favorables, that they should be more responsive, conceptually is not surprising. But I think what was a bit of, it's when you're in action, and I see it as, we stepped in, we're a part of the study, it was a great moment of pausing and rethinking. What I got excited in seeing this was we've been thinking in acquisition and retention mode. Acquisition, those younger consumers, the ROI is probably 50 cents versus my retention is probably $2. Mathematically, that is the investment you make for acquisition. But in seeing that 78% is favorable, and we're only at 53% household penetration on an annual level, we hadn't put that lens into those younger consumers of saying, no, I don't need to teach them what condensed is. Right. I actually just need to find a modern way to remind them of that. And we always get a little antsy about being too nostalgic because it kind of keeps you in the past. But there's just, this insight is just, I should think actually differently about the math, but also more importantly, the brand teams. Who are you digging deep into in terms of, well, what's that message that's going to convert you? Because this isn't true new acquisition. Yeah. So that's a bit of the geekiness of how we take this and rethink and be even more crisp in our targeting, as well as ultimately the creative as well.
Yeah, right. Tom, any reflections, or you want to just jump into? Yes.
No, I mean, very much agree. I think you sometimes get trapped in this paradigm of there's these customers I have, and then there's these new customers I want to acquire. And I think this data says, actually, you should always be on offense trying to acquire the customers you have and new customers all the time, because there's tremendous value, as Linda said, reminding or nudging the customers who've used me before or who love me to use me again. And that's really what the data says.
Yeah, and I think for us, it is this reacquisition. Yeah. It's a bit of acquisition, retention. It is a reacquisition. It's not just, we were saying, kind of backstage, it's not just loyalty. It truly is, you have to reacquire. But, so it's just a new way to think about the different buckets.
Okay, cool. All right, let me kind of keep moving. We have more insights to share. So let's jump into your study, Tom. So do you, let's spend a couple of minutes if you want to kind of tell us a little bit about the campaign, what this is about, why you chose this.
Yeah, I'll set the stage on a couple of things. I mean, I led off by saying we have 2,700 retail stores. So the first thing that we're showing you is an e-commerce study, and I'll come back to some of the why on that. But we have a big and growing e-commerce business. The fiscal year we just closed, we did over $12 billion in sales. It grew 12%. And we know from working with our customers that it's a unique, it's a differentiated experience. It has a really high NPS, and when we get customers to try it, they really love it. The other thing that is sometimes implicit in e-commerce businesses, and this goes back to the comment I made about performance marketing versus brand marketing, you just need performance tactics to drive e-commerce. And so the work that you're going to see is very not e-commerce and very not performance in terms of traditional performance tactics. The campaign that we ran here, we ran over the holiday period of 2022. We ran a similar campaign over the holidays in 2023. It's based on a pretty simple human insight that I think all of you will recognize, and that is that humans connect over meals and form deep emotional connections, breaking bread together, literally and figuratively. And I know in my personal life I have lots of really good memories of holidays, having meals with my family, having meals with friends. And so we took that insight and we built a campaign around it, and we'll play the film in a second. But I think what you'll see is that wasn't explicitly cueing e-commerce in any way, and so we wanted to see what's the net impact that actually has on e-commerce. And then the one other comment I should make on measurement, we obviously, because we're a retailer, we have first-party data, we have a retailer media network. We chose, and we use that data, and we transact on that data every day to run our own internal campaigns, but we chose to have this measured externally by Circana as an independent source of truth to the data that we also see to really validate the results that we see on a day in and day out basis. So maybe why don't you play the film, and then we can talk about what we saw.
Yeah. So.
And I'd give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't wanna go home right now. And all I can taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your life. And sooner or later it's over. I just don't wanna miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand when everything's made to be broken. I just want you to know I am. I just want you to know I am. Ooh.
I love this. It's great. So, Tom, with your permission, let me kind of share some of the results that we're seeing. And I'm going to start with let me call it the known effect, right? So any sort of typical measurement that you would do, after the end of that, you would have a campaign plus look-back window. You would actually see a chart like this, which would tell you that the campaign performed. We had a kind of a significant lift on 1%. We also had like a 3% lift in terms of penetration. Like Tom, you'll take that every day, right?
I'll take 1% sales growth incrementally all the time.
There you go. And yet, this effect, which is a known effect, still kind of doesn't capture three other effects that typically go unmeasured. And we're going to kind of talk about those three effects right now. Remember, innovation in measurement and what we did before, what I said before, we're tracking these people longitudinally, so we can actually start looking at things differently. So what are these three effects? The first one is that this penetration lift, 288, I mean, it wasn't a one-off thing, right? People made an account, they started kind of buying, and then, a lot of them kept buying. Not all of them, but a lot of them kept buying after that. So for every $100 that you got during the campaign, you had another 122 after the campaign. Now, this is one effect that we can measure at the level of the household, and we can see how it kind of responded, again, in terms of like the advertising, and we can, in the experiment that we ran. So that's effect number one. Effect number two is that we created favorables. Not we, you created favorables. And this was a 6 percentage points lift in favorability, which is huge. It's about a couple of million people actually in your footprint. Now, these people, as we saw earlier, also in Linda's case, they buy at a higher rate. They are much more likely to convert. And even if they didn't convert during the campaign, they converted afterwards at a 3x rate compared to non-favorables. You see that chart there? That's an amazing thing that we can produce when we're able to kind of track longitudinally, right? So new favorables that they were non-customers and they became customers afterwards. And the third one is probably, I don't know if it's the most surprising, but it's definitely a very, very important thing here. We think sometimes of our customers as, how would you say, our customers. And some of them are more favorable than others. And that favorability difference makes a difference in terms of the retention. So favorables versus non-favorables in this case have a 5 percentage points difference to be retained over time, every quarter. And that's compounding. So you can actually start doing the math in terms of the lifetime value of someone that is favorable versus non-favorable, right? So if we bring these three things together, we say, okay, there was 3 effects that happen, right, that we kind of analyze them, and then they start adding up to something that is 5 times more than what we thought it was. So over 80% of sales came in the 7 months after the campaign ended, and 80% of that had to do something with favorability. So, Tom, responses to this new information?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exciting to see, we know as a retailer, we have to earn the customer's trust every day, right? And we have to do that in our stores. We have to be in stock. Our stores have to be clean. There's a lot of operational components to it, and that is table stakes. We have to do that. But then to see when we're doing that well, that we can create favorability, and that favorability has a 5x impact down the road, I think is really exciting. And then I think it's really exciting, and I like Linda's term on reacquisition, right? So this becomes a cumulative effect of reacquiring customers over time, and by being always on with campaigns, can you continue to push that forward and ultimately deliver, sustainably and systemic higher returns over time. So I think it's exciting to see. I think I had always had this rule of thumb that the impact was 2 to 1 down the road.
Right.
That was clearly understating what we're seeing, which is exciting.
Yeah. Linda, what do you think? Again, if we think again about what you were saying before about value creation, value capturing, and again, we're waiting for your results. They're going to be out like sometime later, Q3, Q4. So
I think, firstly, excited to see our results to come. I think, Tom, good reminder of, I think industry standard was a bit of the belief of 2 to 1, and this is direct data, direct measurement to say, no, it's actually greater than that. Mm-hmm. I know when I first saw it, my reaction was the test period was not very long. And so given not a very long, and we constantly say, hey, building brand favorability, equity takes time.
Yep. That
period, and back to your thing of continuity then, there's a real case for that of what then the value is, and that value is not 5 years from now, it's not even 2 years from now based on your data. So it just, I think, changes a bit of what we believed to no, there's actually, I think, more substantial data to have more confidence in saying, what do I build into my building blocks?
Right. Yeah. So Tom, we have another slide. You want to go to that, or do you want to introduce that slide in terms of so how you think about brand, basically?
I mean, again, this goes back to what I said earlier, right? Brand is performance, right? It's about driving performance with our brand advertising. Obviously, I very much set it up that was very non-e-commerce advertising. That was very what you would call traditional performance advertising. And yet we saw a big, meaningful shift on our e-commerce business, which is not necessarily what it was designed to do. So I think it speaks to when you get, and this is the hard work, but when you get deep human insights and you put it together and do strong creative, you can drive big impacts with brand, and that's what this data is showing.
Right. So, with that in mind.
Loving can hurt. Loving can hurt sometimes, but it's the only thing that I know. When it gets hard, it can get hard sometimes. It is the only thing that makes us feel alive. We keep this love in a photograph. We made these memories for ourselves, where our eyes are never closing, our hearts are never broken, and time's forever frozen still. So you can keep me inside the pocket of your ripped jeans, holding me close until
And I should say, we made the decision to recreate another version based on the same insight, based on the internal data that we saw. Obviously, it was well in advance of getting this data back, but we had a pretty strong conviction that it did create value, that it did create customer favorability, that it did create an emotional connection with our customers, and that we had a really strong insight that connected with us, which is food, and what we do. So we ran it back based off of that, and obviously this data makes me feel better about running it back.
Right. It's a place of comfort, almost like a cup of warm soup. All right, with that in mind.
I did not pay you to say that.
All right, with that in mind, I think we're out of time, but I want to leave time for one more thing. This is my one more thing. But before we do, last question. Any sort of wish list that you guys have, or maybe Tom, for like what would the industry be doing better in terms of anything to kind of help marketers in this space?
Oh, I could go. Yeah, I think experimentation. I came into an organization that had a very structured, layered measurement program, and it's really my wish for everyone is don't accept kind of that status quo and go with the momentum, even on the strategic side, and experiment, because in that experimentation, you come in with a hypothesis of what you think you're going to learn.
Science method.
Yeah, yes,
Scientific method.
the scientific method. But what you gain is usually more than that, and that's exactly, in our case, very much the case. I'm so happy we participated.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree. It's a spirit of continuous improvement, and I'm passionate about this space because I believe that marketing is a tool for growth, right? And marketing can grow brands, it can grow categories, it can grow markets, right? Marketing, that's the whole point of the name of it. And so I really want that to be the story and the narrative behind the work that we do as marketers, as we're forces for growth inside our companies, right? Category growth and using brand as a tool to do that. Right? So hopefully this data helps build that narrative.
Right. So if only this was accessible to other marketers as well. Greg, Stuart, Michael, Sean, can you come on stage, please?
So listen, everyone, good job. Appreciate it. Thank you. Not too busy to do better, just to be really clear, both of them in a big way. Listen, I've asked Michael Schoen to join me on stage. We just want to make a very quick announcement to you. So this research was actually, as Vaz mentioned, developed originally by both him and Joel Rubinson, was where the original idea and the work came from. And so we've been working to do a few of these studies. We've done now 3, and we're working on a 4th one. But it's bigger than an MMA trade association can do. And so we've actually now struck a partnership. And to be very clear, this is just me taking credit for Vassilis' work. He struck a partnership, just to be clear, with TransUnion, if you don't know, the old market share partners, for those of you old as I am, to remember that. and they are going to be taking on the methodology and turning this into products so that you can all sort of efficiently, effectively do this research anytime you want. MMA will stay involved. We're happy to work with you and do what we've done with the other brands, but we're here to announce that. So Michael, why don't you share some thoughts? Just wait, if you don't know, Michael's EVP GM of the TransUnion business. So.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, and thank you, Baz, and the whole MMA team. We're really excited about this partnership. This is the kind of work that makes the MMA special, because this is not just an academic exercise. This is about actually helping brands understand the value of what they're doing. And it's also not just about patting yourself on the back and understanding the value that you've created with your brand, but actually making different decisions in your marketing to drive greater outcomes and optimize your business over time. So we're excited to be the partner here and to bring this capability to as many brands as possible and have a real impact on your business. So thank you.
So if you want to do a branded performance or whatever we ultimately relabel it, reach out to me or Vassilis, find us here, Greg at MMA Global, reach out to Michael either way. All good. Linda, Thomas, we can't thank you enough for your leadership. This was very, very hard to do and complex to be the first people, right? Thank you. Well done. Thank you, everyone. Your host will be back up in a moment, and we'll keep going.